There are many Sonic fan games out there, like a crap ton, some of which are very good and others not so good. However, sometimes these fan games become ambitious enough to run something like the Doom engine. What? What? Now this game has been getting some much deserved attention lately, almost to the point that anyone totally new to Sonic might mistake it for an official game. That's how much quality this game brings. Sonic Robo Blast 2 is a fan-made Sonic game that started way back running on the Doom engine, and has had many upon many builds and updates over the past 2 decades. Yes, it's that old, and despite its age, it has only improved. Now, before I jump into the myriad of complex details about the game, I should speak a bit about Doom first, right? Doom is one of the fathers of the first-person shooter genre in 1993. Created by id Software after the success of their Wolfenstein game, Wolfenstein being the grandfather of FPS. A very neat twist for the time, killing demons in a 3-dimensional space was pretty novel in the early 90s, and the game itself turned out to be quite a hit. Its speed, its visceral violence, and satisfying gunplay were all the elements it needed to push the genre forward. It was a very fast-paced, quick action shooter with heavy elements of exploration and minor puzzle solving. There is a reason when its sequel releases people go crazy. I mean, look at modern Doom. It's essentially what it used to be, only more and more and more and more and more and more and more. So with that, Doom was a success, and along came its community. A community driven to expand and explore the limitations and tricks that the tech that Doom could pull off. Doom ran on id Tech 1, the very first id Tech engine used for their games, and an engine eventually adopted by other devs at the time. Games like Heretic or its sequel Hexen. I didn't even think that had a sequel. I think there was a Hexen too. I think, but maybe that didn't run too. However, once it came to the late 90s, after the modding community had spent years tinkering with the engine, someone decided, you know what? Let's make a Sonic game out of this. Now, I'm not one to judge, nor am I one to really, prod over a thought someone has, but that seems kind of crazy to me. But when you really think about the gameplay of classic Doom, a lot of things start to make sense about its relation to a Sonic game. And I probably sound crazy just saying that sentence. It's obviously not immediately noticeable at first, but when you consider the pacing and speed that Doom is designed with, it's not too difficult to imagine that same momentum and speed being controlled with a blue speedy hedgehog, right? Sonic Robo Blast, the first one, started off as a little game, very similar to the many Flash games of the time and their quality. This is more or less what people played online on their PCs. I remember playing hours of Flash games in my school computer lab before they blocked all websites containing fun. Even if it was an educational game I was playing, that was still blocked too. I even asked the lead tech guy who was responsible for the firewalls and blocking of the school system, and his only response was that all games are blocked, period, even if they're educational. I was so upset about that at the time. Looking back, it's kind of silly. Anyway, I decided to try the first Sonic Robo Blast. It's been so long, I might as well look into it. And holy hell is this hard to play. The devs themselves even say the game is pretty unplayable without cheating for extra lives, and I can see how. Like, I'm having trouble jumping. Like, you have to stand still a bit to jump. You can't jump right next to a ledge because it just won't let you make it. And rings are kind of everywhere, and enemies seem kind of random. The level design in general just seems kind of random. Surprisingly enough, its sequel, Sonic Robo Blast 2, didn't start on the Doom engine at all. You can play the original right now, which is more in line with their first game, only now, the screen scrolls. Woo! And there is even a story. Like, raising that production value, you know? And bosses aren't as... No, never mind. It's still the same. Despite all this though, for the time, this was kind of impressive actually. Anyway, it isn't until Halloween of 1999 that they made the first proof of concept for a Sonic game to run within the Doom engine. It's essentially like a Sonic holiday little project. You can see it's pretty primitive, but it resembles the building blocks of what we see, today. You can clearly still see the Doom in this with the menus and stuff. I don't understand the ghost thing going on, or what this is supposed to exactly be. But it's there. You can see. This is where they started, using the Doom Legacy engine. It wasn't until November of the year 2000, almost over a year later, I guess? Yeah, this would be over a year later. They released the first demo of Sonic Robo Blast 2, containing an unfinished green flower zone. You could effectively control Sonic within the 3D space, and had access to traverse the environment. It was neat to see, I'm sure, but I wasn't aware of the game till a bit later. And they later released a second demo that added and changed a few things. Characters like Tails and Knuckles were also added and more fleshed out, and the levels themselves are full and large, though their level design clearly could use a lot of work, but this is still about 20 years ago after all, right when they're getting started. And then here is where I come in. In their final demo is when I actually became aware of the game's existence. I was browsing an old game download website, GameHippo.com, and I remember that website so vividly, because there I would download game after game after game because they were all free. It was a freeware gaming website. And this was more or less the first time I had owned a computer for myself that wasn't shared with my parents and stuff. It was just me and my bros using the computer. We had high-speed internet at the time, whatever was considered high-speed internet, Very relative to the time, because let's face it, they have run out of their best stuff to sell you on speed. We're the fastest in the market. We're lightning speed. Every time you come out with a new one, say lightning speed, it's like, well, what was before? What was that? It's like when you watch dish soap commercials, they compare brands, where they put one brand that has the dish soap, and they put their newest brand. Hey, check this out. It wipes it absolutely clean, as if it was completely new. And then the comparison is they spray it and they wipe it and it's all still there. When it's even water would get rid of more than what was there. Come on, man. I get you trying to get a comparison, but you already used them up. Now I can't take new dish soap seriously. I don't know why I went on that side rant. Anyway, I know that the final demo is the version I first played because I distinctly remember the content of the demo when I had played it. This was also the time level WADs and characters were being created at an insane degree, which is when I would download level packs and characters to further fill my version of the game with content. If you don't know, Doom used something called WADs, W-A-D, files that contained content that anyone can make. It was basically the modding community for Doom, and a WAD was the mod for the game. That's the best way for me to explain it, or like a ROM hack if you want to be more general. Anyway, this is when I got into the game, and I would try to share it with others because I was so excited about it. The impression people got at the time was indifference whenever I would show them the game. Sonic had kind of fallen off due to Sonic 06 at the time, and when you look back at 2006, there was so much hype leading up to that game. However, this didn't really slow things down for Sonic Robo Blast 2. The community was only getting bigger, but it was just the attention to Sonic in general that waned, and his reputation. But this isn't a video about the rise and fall and the rise and fall and the rise of Sonic. It's something to keep in mind just when discussing anything Sonic related to the past. Anyway, many years later, fast forwarding from 2006 from that final demo to 2010, they released 2.0, a far fuller experience of the game. It's the 2.0 version, and the one I last played before what we have today. At this time, slopes were still not a thing, and it was still considered impossible to even do. I mean, so many years this engine's been around, and all of a sudden now we have slopes? The reality though, is that I never got used to the controls with mouse and keyboard. I would experiment with the gamepad, but the physics and design of the way you controlled the character was not exactly smooth, so keyboard and mouse was the quickest and most accessible way to play the game. I ended up continuing to play level mods instead, and character mods people created. I played this version for a few months before I stopped completely, and didn't look back for nearly a decade. Okay, now that all the details about the game's past are done, let's actually get into the game and what makes it good, but also what makes it a good Sonic game. Now, many people have broken down Sonic in hundreds of ways, and what makes Sonic good or bad, etc. I am no expert, just someone who has loved and played Sonic most of my life, along with playing every game I can, but again, that doesn't make me an expert, just someone with an opinion on Sonic. To me, there are two things that are needed for a Sonic game. Is it a momentum-based platformer, and does it have good level design? To be fair, some Sonic games are designed without being momentum-based, but if their level design reflects that, it's normally fine. When I say momentum-based platformer, I'm referring to a platformer where movement is something constantly managed by the player. Now you think to yourself, but wait, aren't you always managing movement for any character you control in a video game? Yes and no. Managing your movement and controlling your movement are two different things. For example, take Ghosts and Goblins. See how Arthur moves in a static speed all the time? This isn't an isolated incident either. You can see this in like Bloodstained or even Mega Man. They always have the same pace of movement and speed. Notice how they move at the same speed no matter what. Also, in these games, your jump is pretty defined to land a certain way each time. You have little control over how you jump. With the exception of Mega Man, you aren't managing the distance of your jump. How long you're in the air for, the direction of your jump cannot be changed once triggered. These are things that are done for you within the game, just like the max speed of these games. In Sonic, however, there is a lot more control that goes on with all of his movement. He accelerates when he moves, which means movement is constantly changing. And if what you're controlling is constantly changing, it requires some management to be a success, right? Whether that be jumping or not. Other momentum-based platformers are games like Donkey Kong Country or even Mario 64, where your speed increases and decreases depending on the flow you are executing during a level. Flow being the actions you are taking to smoothly complete a stage. Again, trying to manage the speed you go, maintaining a good flow like you're gliding across the level. That is the feeling you want to capture in a momentum-based platformer, and is the reason these games are so replayable and have a high skill ceiling for players to keep at. Those tiny windows within a momentum-based platformer where you are managing that speed and still nailing every obstacle is such a feeling of euphoria. It's no wonder Sonic fans like me buy a new Sonic game every time, regardless of its feedback or reputation. Personally, in my opinion, this is the very thing Sonic Team needs to focus more on in the future of their games, but that's just me. Back to Sonic Robo Blast 2. In today's version, 2.2 and up, this takes what worked in the 2D games and does its best to apply all of those rules and quirks into a 3D space. Much differently in approach than how Sega tackled their attempt at a 3D Sonic game with Sonic Adventure. And looks like I am out of time. Please stay tuned for next time in part 2, where I'll be tackling the actual game. Bye.